All right, let's talk about something you think you know, the mission to save the bees. It seems so simple, right? Well, today we're going to peel back the layers on this one, because the real story is way more surprising and a whole lot more complex than you might think.
I mean, you've seen it everywhere. The Save the Bees movement is huge. And the poster child, of course, is the honeybee. It's this beloved icon, the symbol of nature that we all rally behind and want to protect.
And right here, this is where it gets tricky, because behind the scenes, a really serious debate is brewing among conservationists. And they're asking a pretty tough question. What if, by putting all our energy into the honeybee, we're accidentally making things worse for the incredible diversity of other bees out there? Yeah, this isn't some simple good guy, bad guy story. It's a really unexpected conflict, rooted in some deep ecological science. So let's get into why some of the experts are starting to sound the alarm. And look, this isn't just some fringe idea from a few people. We're talking about major environmental organizations, especially in Germany, that are now saying out loud, hey, wait a minute. They're arguing that this well-meaning boom in beekeeping could actually be creating a whole new set of problems. Two of the heavy hitters here are NABU, that's Germany's huge nature and biodiversity conservation union, and the German Wildlife Foundation. And their criticism is really specific. They're pointing a finger at the super high kind of artificial density of honeybees in places like cities and nature reserves. And they're saying it's directly hurting the native wild bees. Okay, and let's be super clear about this, because it's the whole point. Nobody is saying honeybees are bad. This is not an anti-honeybee argument. The problem isn't the bee itself, it's the sheer number of them, these massive managed populations being packed into fragile environments that just can't handle it without someone losing out. And this isn't just a hunch, it's backed by some pretty solid science. When researchers did these big meta-analyses, like a major one in 2023, they looked at all the existing studies. And what they found was that in more than half the cases, honeybees had a clear negative effect on wild bees. So the risk is very real. Which, of course, leads to the big question. Okay, why? Why is this happening? What is it about a honeybee and, say, a wild mason bee that puts them in such direct and fierce competition with each other? To really get this, you have to understand the players involved. So think of this as a tale of two very different bees whose entire way of life creates this massive imbalance when they're forced to fight for the same food. Just look at this breakdown. On one side, you've got the honeybee. They live in these massive colonies, tens of thousands of workers. They're generalists, so they'll eat from pretty much any flower, and they can fly up to 10 kilometers to find it. But then you have the wild bees. And get this, 90% of them are solitary, just one single female doing all the work. Many of them are picky eaters who need specific plants, and they might only fly a few hundred meters their entire life. So what happens when you put these two in the same ring? Well, it's not exactly a fair fight. It's what scientists call an asymmetrical competition, which is just a fancy way of saying one side has all the advantages. The honeybee colony is basically a super efficient resource hoovering machine. And to really hammer home just how unbalanced this is, I want you to look at this one number, 100,000. What on earth could that represent? That number? That's how many wild bees could be raised on the pollen a single strong honeybee colony gobbles up in a year. Think about that. One hive can literally eat the food needed for 100,000 baby wild bees. It just vacuums up the resources for generations of native pollinators. Okay, so we get the what, the ecological mismatch. But what about the why? Why is this conflict flaring up in these specific spots like parks and nature reserves? Well, the answer shows us this isn't really about bees at all. It's a symptom of a much, much bigger problem. And here's something really important. On this next point, pretty much everyone agrees, beekeepers and conservationists alike. The real villain in the story of pollinator decline is modern industrial agriculture. It's the habitat loss, the endless fields of single crops, and of course, the pesticides. So you can see how this domino effect happens. First, industrial farms become toxic, dangerous places for bees. So what do beekeepers do? They make a totally rational choice. They move their hives to what seem like safe places. Cities, parks, nature reserves. But the unintended consequence is that the honeybee population in these small areas just explodes. And suddenly, the last safe havens for wild bees become these intense battlegrounds for food. So when you hear conservation groups talk about regulating honeybees in certain areas, it's really important to understand what they're not saying.
They are not attacking beekeepers. They see it as a practical, necessary tool to manage and protect these last few biodiversity hotspots, precisely because our larger agricultural system is failing everyone.
All right, so the problem is complex. But the good news is it's not hopeless. There's a path forward here, and it's built on finding common ground with clear, actionable solutions that can help everyone, and especially help all the bees. For these sensitive habitats, the proposals are pretty straightforward. Things like creating real management plans for nature reserves, using science to set limits on how many hives can be in one area, maybe creating buffer zones around known wild bee nests, and actually studying our cities to figure out how many bees are already there before we add more. And for beekeepers, the path forward is all about collaboration, teaming up with conservationists to put real pressure on industrial agriculture, practicing some self-regulation, being open about where hives are, and joining these cool collaborative groups that bring beekeepers, scientists, and farmers together to find solutions. Because when you boil it all down, everybody is actually fighting for the same thing. The real mission isn't just about saving one type of bee, it's about fixing our landscapes so they're healthy and vibrant and diverse enough to support all the pollinators.
So, if you take one thing away from all of this, let it be this. This is not about picking a side. Team honeybee versus team wild bee, that whole frame is just wrong. It completely misses the point.
The whole honeybee versus wild bee thing, that's not even the right question to be asking. It's a distraction from the much bigger, much more important challenge that we all have to face together. The real question, the one that truly matters, is this. Can we change our world, our farms, our cities, and our backyards to create a landscape that is healthy enough and rich enough and has room for both? That's the real mission.